Something 8 feet tall, with human-like fingers, tested my cabin door handle last November. My trail camera caught everything. The government offered me money to destroy it, threatened me when I refused, and what I documented proves these creatures are far more intelligent than anyone knows. I spent 3 decades tracking wildlife through federal lands. I know the difference between a black bear on its hind legs and something unnatural. And what walked up to my cabin door last November was exactly that. The cameras had been up for less than a week. 3 trail cams around my property, standard practice before winter. I run a remote cabin about 40 miles east of Bend, Oregon, accessible only by a logging road that gets snowed in from December through March. My nearest neighbor is 11 miles away. I was reviewing the previous night's footage, fast-forwarding through mule deer, coyotes, 1 black bear. Then the timestamp hit 2:47 in the morning and the motion sensor triggered. The figure that moved into frame was too large, too upright, 8 feet tall, maybe more, covered in dark hair that caught the infrared glow like oil on water, shoulders broader than any human, arms that hung past where the knees should be. But it was the movement that got me, deliberate, purposeful, heading straight for my door. It reached for the door handle, not swipe at it, not scratch at the wood. It reached for the handle with a massive hand, fingers extending, testing the latch. The door was locked. The figure paused, tilted its head, then did something that made my hands shake. It turned and looked directly at the camera. The eyes reflected in the infrared, and those eyes held intelligence, recognition, understanding that it was being watched. Then it backed away 3 steps, never breaking eye contact, and disappeared into the tree line. I sat there for 30 minutes staring at the frozen frame. What I saw wasn't animal awareness. It was consciousness, intent. I watched that clip 30 times that morning, looking for some explanation. Camera malfunction, elaborate costume, trick of shadows. But the footage was clean. The metadata confirmed the timestamp, and the tracks I found that afternoon measured 14 inches long and 7 inches wide, with a stride length of nearly 6 feet. Something massive had visited my cabin, something that understood doors and cameras, and as I sat there at sunset, I had a feeling I couldn't shake. It would come back. The motion alert woke me at 3:12 the next morning. Same figure, approaching from a different angle, circling my cabin, testing the door, checking the windows, running those massive hands along the logs like it was reading Braille. The visits continued, each night between 2:30 and 3:30. Each night, a different approach. It tested the shutters. I examined the chimney, standing on my woodpile to reach it. But November 9th changed everything. That night, it didn't come alone. 2 figures. The original, massive and dark-haired, and a second one, smaller, maybe 6 feet tall, with lighter coloring. The way they moved together, the smaller one following the larger one's lead. I've seen that behavior before, in bears with cubs, in elk with calves. I was watching a parent teach its offspring. Only the larger one came forward, while the smaller one remained at the tree line, watching, learning. Then it returned, and I watched them communicate. Low vocalizations are barely picked up by the camera's audio, not random grunts, deliberate exchanges, language. Over the next few nights, I documented 7 distinct individuals, different sizes, different builds, a clan. And they weren't randomly wandering. They were systematically investigating my cabin, my property, and my presence. They knew I was inside. They knew I was watching, and they kept coming back. By mid-November, I understood something that should have terrified me, but didn't. This was intelligence gathering. These creatures were making a decision about me, about whether I was a threat or something else. What I didn't know was that I wasn't the only one watching. Someone else had noticed the unusual activity. Someone with surveillance technology far beyond trail, cameras. But first, November 10th, the 7th night. The night I stopped being an observer and became a participant. I'd been wrestling with a decision. If these creatures kept trying to get inside, maybe it wasn't about breaking in. I thought about the old stories my grandfather told about the mountain tribes before the logging companies came. They left offerings, food for the spirits of the forest. At dusk, I took a bundle from my smokehouse. Dried salmon, venison jerky, dried huckleberries. I wrapped it in brown paper and placed it on my porch, right where that massive hand had tested my door handle 6 times. Then I went inside, turned off the lights except my laptop, and waited. I had my firearm across my lap. When you live this far from help, you don't meet the unknown unarmed. The sound came before the motion sensor triggered. Heavy footfalls on frozen ground. I stayed perfectly still, watching the feed while listening through my cabin wall. The creature approached, wood creaking under its weight. A pause. Then a sound I'd never heard, a low vocalization, almost subsonic, that made my chest vibrate. I watched as it picked up the bundle, held it, examined it with those impossibly large hands. For nearly 2 minutes it just stood there. Then it did something that made every rational explanation evaporate. It carefully set down the bundle, reached into a pouch made from hide across its shoulder, and pulled something out. It placed this object where the food had been. Then it picked up my offering and walked away. I waited until sunrise, 3 hours in that chair. When grey light filtered through my windows, I walked to my door. On my porch sat 3 smooth river stones, arranged in a perfect triangle, and beside them a pine cone the size of my fist, its scales still sealed tight. I picked up the stones. They were warm, not from sitting in the cold air, but warm as if they'd been held, carried, cherished. This wasn't random. This was a trade, communication. Proof that what walked up to my cabin wasn't just an undiscovered animal. It was a thinking being, with culture, with customs, with the capacity for exchange. I still have those stones. They sit on my desk right now. I continued the offerings. Each night, I left food. Each night, something was left in return. Deliberate gifts that evolved in complexity. Raven feathers arranged in a compass pattern. Carved wood that fit perfectly in my palm. Elk bone with deliberate etchings, symbols. They were communicating through objects, teaching me their language without words. Then, one evening in mid-November, they came back. All of them. 7 figures at the edge of my property. They didn't approach. They stood at the boundary for nearly an hour. I watched from my window, heart hammering. They were watching me, all of them. This whole week has been a test. They were evaluating me, deciding if I was safe, if I could be trusted. The coordinated movements, the communication, the cultural exchange. This was sophisticated social behavior. These creatures had language, tools, customs, and social structures. If you want to follow this deeper, hit that subscribe button right now, because the federal government's response will prove they've known about these beings far longer than they've ever admitted. The sound of vehicles woke me 3 days later. Multiple engines, heavy and powerful, coming up that rutted track like they owned it. Black SUV, no markings, federal plates. It pulled up to my gate and stopped, engine running. For 10 minutes, it just sat there. Then a second vehicle arrived, They weren't hiding. They were announcing their presence. The message was clear. For 3 hours, those vehicles sat at my gate. Then, at noon, they left. No contact, no explanation, just presence. That night, the clan didn't come. It was like they'd sensed the federal presence and made themselves scarce. The knock came the next morning. Professional, authoritative. I opened it to find 2 people. The woman in front was 40s, short dark hair, eyes like chips of flint. She held up a badge. "Mr. Mitchell, I'm Agent Sarah Morrison, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. This is Agent Chen. We'd like to discuss unusual activity on your property." Morrison didn't sit. She stood in my cabin like she owned it, tablet in hand, eyes scanning everything. "Let's not waste time. We know what you've captured. We know you've made copies. We know you met with Marcus Chen in Bend 3 days ago." She turned the tablet toward me. On screen, a photograph of me and Marcus at the diner, taken from across the street through a window. "We've been monitoring you and this property for 6 weeks. My throat went dry. "You've been watching me? We watch everyone who gets this close." She pulled up another file. Satellite thermal imaging. My property. Multiple heat signatures. Human-sized but not human. Moving through the forest in coordinated patterns. "We monitor this region carefully. We have for decades. What you've been documenting isn't new to us. We're aware of the population. We've been managing it since before you moved here." They knew. They'd always known. While park rangers publicly dismissed Bigfoot as a myth, other branches have been tracking them, monitoring them, in complete secrecy. "How long?" "Longer than you've been alive. What we need to discuss now is your footage, your documentation, and what you plan to do with it." She pulled up photographs of other people. 2008, Oregon. 2011, Washington. 2016, Montana. All had footage. All decided to go public. She paused. "Where do you think they are now, Mr. Mitchell?" The threat was clear. You expose them. They're targets. Trophy hunters. Media circus. Religious extremists. Scientists want to capture them. We've modeled every scenario. Public knowledge leads to their extinction within 5 years. She placed her card on my table. "Think about what I've said. We'll be back in 72 hours. After they left, I sat staring at that card. The weight of knowing that every reported sighting had people like Morrison making sure those stories stayed stories. That afternoon, I called Marcus Chen. Former ranger, 38 years in these mountains. We'd worked together in the 90s. If anyone knew the unofficial truth, it was Marcus. We met at a diner in Bend. I showed him one photograph. Marcus went pale. His coffee cup trembled. "Oh, they found you," he said. "Not it. They." Marcus slid a weathered folder across the table. Wouldn't look me in the eye. When I opened it, the smell hit me. Old paper. Decades of storage. The first page was a photocopied incident report. Date: September 12th, 1978. Ranger M. Chen. Description: encountered bipedal subject approximately 7 to 8 feet tall. Track castings taken. Hair samples collected. Photographic evidence obtained. Status: classified. Project Sentinel. What is Project Sentinel? Marcus finally looked at me. His eyes held fear. That's what they call the thing you just became part of. Page after page, dozens of rangers, decades of documentation, all stamped Project Sentinel, all buried, all classified. Sightings, track castings, hair samples, all confiscated, all vanished. 247 documented encounters, just in the Cascade Range. This isn't a mystery, Dave. This is managed information control. They've known since at least the late 60s. Multiple populations, multiple regions. They protect them by denying they exist. A clear photograph from 1989, a track casting from 1993, 17 inches long. Incident after incident, all documented, all suppressed. You've got something they don't. Modern trail cameras with metadata they can't fake. Digital files that can be copied before confiscation. If you're going to expose this, do it completely. But understand, they won't stop at legal threats. I drove home with that folder. 60 years of cover-up, and I had 72 hours to decide whether I'd become part of it or break it open. That night, I didn't sleep. I reviewed every frame. I studied Marcus's folder, and I made copies, multiple copies, encrypted hard drives, cloud storage under fake accounts. But the clan was about to prove they understood exactly what was at stake. The sound made me freeze. Not footfalls outside, something closer. My door latches clicking. I'd forgotten to lock it. And now, my door was opening. The figure filled my doorframe, 8 feet tall, massive shoulders, dark hair catching the orange glow of my fire. I was sitting there, a firearm leaning against the wall 10 feet away. Unreachable. Time stopped. Every survival instinct screamed at me to move, but I couldn't. I could only stare as this impossible being stood at my threshold, backlit by starlight, breath visible in clouds. Then it waited, deliberately, not advancing, not retreating, giving me time to process. It wasn't forcing its way in. It was waiting for permission. Come in. 3 steps, careful, deliberate. The creature moved into my cabin and closed the door behind itself, with the same care I would use. Then it stood there, in the firelight, scars on its hands, grey hair around its face, eyes that held intelligence and something else, loneliness, recognition of another isolated being. We stood there for 5 minutes. I could hear its breathing, slow, controlled, the measured breath of a thinking being managing its own fear. Because I was afraid. I could see it in its shoulders, the way it held its hands forward, ready to retreat. I'm not going to hurt you. Its shoulders relaxed, fractionally. Then it reached into that hide, pouch, slowly, showing me its hand was empty first, a gesture of trust. It pulled something out, extended it toward me. I stood slowly and crossed the space between us. I took it carefully, our fingers not quite touching, and stepped back. Bone, carved bone, elk bone, aged and smoothed by months of work. On its surface, an image, 2 figures standing side by side, one large, one small, in front of a structure, my cabin. Below, marks, 7 vertical lines carved deep, 7 nights of visits, 7 nights of testing, 7 nights of deciding. This was planned, crafted over long hours to communicate recognition, acknowledgement. The creature pulled out 2 more pieces, older, more weathered. The first showed multiple figures seated in a circle. Some are clearly human, others not, together around a fire. The second showed a human handing something to a figure that wasn't human. Trade, history carved into bone. These weren't new creations. These were artifacts, passed down, documentation of a time when humans and these beings had coexisted, had traded openly, before the government decided it was better if we forgot. The creature placed all 3 carvings in my hands. Then it backed toward the door. It paused at the threshold. It pointed at me, then at the carvings, then toward the mountain. An invitation. It wanted me to come with it, to witness what Morrison had been hiding for 6 decades. The creature left, pulling my door closed. I stood, holding 3 pieces of carved bone that shouldn't exist. Proof of culture, proof of intelligence, proof of a history that had been deliberately erased. I had 24 hours before Morrison's deadline. Dawn came cold and clear. I made my decision. I packed a day pack, water, emergency supplies, trail camera, phone. I strapped on my boots and entered restricted federal territory, where signs warned of sensitive environmental restoration. The creature was waiting 50 yards in. When I peered, made a low vocalization, inviting. It turned and began walking deeper, looking back occasionally. We hiked for 2 hours, steep terrain, crossing a river I didn't know existed, moving through old-growth forest, so dense sunlight barely penetrated. Trees are 400 years old, never logged in, never surveyed, protected by silence, by denial. Then we reached a box canyon I'd never seen on any map, and at the far end, against the cliff face, I saw something that made me forget how to breathe. The smell hit me first. Wood smoke. Old smoke. We rounded the canyon wall, and I stopped walking. This wasn't camping. This wasn't a temporary shelter. Lean-tos built with intention. Branches woven tight enough to be weatherproof against storms. Elevated platforms on stripped and smoothed supports. A fire circle surrounded by sitting logs chosen for size and shape. Storage areas with bundles hanging overhead. A water channel diverted from the cliff, flowing into a basin carved from stone. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold the camera. 7 figures watched from different positions. The juvenile half hidden behind its mother. An elder with silver-white hair sitting near the fire circle. Sentries on the high points. I'd spent 30 years studying wildlife. But this wasn't wildlife behavior. This was civilization. And the government had known since before I was born. My guide vocalized. The others relaxed. Permission granted. I'd been cleared to witness, to understand. I spent 30 minutes filming. This was permanent. Structures showing maintenance, repair, storage with gathered food, a managed water source, social organization with clear roles. The elder approached slowly. Each step is deliberate. When it stopped 3 feet away, I could see details cameras never capture. Scars across its knuckles, calluses from decades working with stone and wood, eyes that held the weight of leadership. It reached out, both hands, placed them on my shoulders. The weight was immense, not just physical, the gesture itself. Those hands held power enough to snap my neck. Instead, they rested there, gentle, trusting. I felt my eyes burn. This elder who'd kept its clan hidden for generations was choosing to trust me, was placing their survival in my hands, saying, "You may know us, but don't betray us." I placed my hands over its hands. I understand. I won't break this. The elder's eyes closed briefly. Acknowledgement. Then it stepped back, and I knew I'd just participated in something few humans had ever experienced. A treaty, a covenant between species. I counted 12 individuals total, 3 juveniles, reproductive population, sustainable numbers, multiple generations, maintaining permanent dwellings, managing resources. As I hiked out, I checked my phone. 2 missed calls from Morrison. Her deadline had passed. She'd be back with legal authority to seize everything. But I had hidden hard drives, encrypted files, Marcus's documentation, and footage, proving the government had been lying for 60 years. The question was whether to use it, whether to protect these beings by keeping their secret or by making them too public to hide. The black SUVs were already there, 2 of them, plus a park service truck. Morrison stood on my porch. "Mr. Mitchell, you've been in restricted areas. We're going to need you to surrender your recording equipment. All of it." I walked past her, unlocked my door, and went inside. She followed with Chen and 2 others. I handed over my trail cameras, my laptop, my phone. Morrison examined the equipment. "Where are the backup copies?" "I don't know what you're talking about." Yes, you do. Where are they? I met her eyes. What are you charging me with? Filming wildlife? Or documenting something you've been hiding since before I was born? Morrison pulled out her tablet. Classified files. Population monitoring data, going back to 1963. Multiple locations. Cascade Range. Olympic Peninsula. Northern Rockies. Sierra. Nevada. Appalachians. 14 documented populations. Hundreds of individuals. All tracked. All monitored. All kept secret. Project Sentinel, I said. Yes, established 1963, after multiple credible sightings. We've been protecting them by controlling information for 60 years. It works. They're still here. They're stable. Safe? Or just hidden? You expose them. They're targets. Trophy hunters. Media circus. Scientists want to capture them. You saw how they live. How long does that last if the world knows where to find them? Morrison changed tactics. Work with us. Become a sanctioned observer. Monitor the clan under official protocols. Document their behavior. You'd be doing more good than any scientist who's never spent time with them. In exchange for? Silence. The footage stays classified. The settlement stays secret. The world keeps thinking they're myths, and they keep surviving. I had 72 hours to decide whether to become part of the machinery that kept these beings hidden, or to break it. I couldn't sleep. Morrison's offer sat downstairs. Official observer status, contract, non-disclosure agreement. Then I heard them, all of them, multiple vocalizations, low-frequency calls that made my windows vibrate. I got up and stepped outside. They were there, all 12, surrounding my cabin, not threatening, protective. The male approached the elder, both agitated. The male pointed toward the valley. Danger, threat. I followed their gaze and felt my stomach drop. Lights in the valley. Vehicle lights. Many. A convoy. At least 8 vehicles moving up the mountain road, but not toward my cabin. Toward the restricted area. Toward the canyon. Toward the settlement. Morrison said they protect them. But watching those lights, I understood. There are factions. Some wanted preservation through secrecy. Others wanted to study, capture, evidence they could control in laboratories. The elder placed both hands on my shoulders. Help us. The male pulled out one more carving, fresh bone, still damp, hastily made. The image is clear, figures running, fleeing, flames, destruction. They were showing me the future. What happens when government protection becomes government control? When someone decides they need specimens instead of populations, and they were asking me to stop it. I looked at the elder, at the male, at the juvenile clinging to its mother, then at those lights moving up the mountain, and I made a decision. I ran inside, grabbed the hidden hard drives from my firewood box, booted up my satellite internet. Slow, unreliable, but off-grid. I started uploading everything. Trail camera footage, settlement documentation, Marcus's files, all to multiple platforms. YouTube, news outlets, cryptozoology forums, whistleblower contacts. I titled it, Undeniable Proof, Bigfoot Clan, Hidden in Cascades, Government Cover-Up since 1963. Upload progress, 23%. My connection was crawling, 2 megabits per second. Cloud cover, weather interference, not moving fast enough. My phone rang. Morrison, declined. Rang again, declined. Progress, 31%, pounding on the door. Federal agents, open this door. Progress, 38%. The connection stuttered, dropped to 37. Progress, 42%. More pounding. We have legal authority. You have 30 seconds. Vehicle doors, multiple agents, backup. Progress, 56%. Something hit the door. They were breaching. Maybe 2 minutes. Progress, 61%. Stabilized. Moving faster. 67. 74. The door frame cracked. Progress. 84. 89. We're entering now. Progress. 94. 97. 99. The door burst open. Morrison and 3 agents. Progress. 100%. Complete. Multiple platforms. Irreversible. Morrison's face went white. What did you just do? Made them too public to disappear. You said you wanted to protect them. Prove it. Because in 5 minutes, the world's going to know they exist. So either raid that canyon and prove you're the threat, or actually protect them like you claimed. Silence. Then Morrison, quieter, dangerous. You just endangered them more than we ever could. Or I just made them too important to hide. Within 20 minutes, 300 views. Within an hour, 15,000. By dawn, 400,000 and climbing. News outlets, cryptozoology community, scientists demanding verification. The footage was everywhere. Morrison's convoy didn't raid the canyon. At 4 in the morning, those vehicles turned around and retreated. Because now, the world was watching. Now they couldn't make the clan disappear, because too many people knew where to look. I'd broken the 60-year cover-up. The fallout was immediate. My property became ground zero for the media, researchers, and tourists. The Forest Service closed all access. Emergency conservation orders. Morrison's team established a perimeter around the canyon, not to hide it, but to protect it from the stampede. I faced federal charges, unauthorized access, endangering protected species, but public pressure was enormous. Congressional hearings. Why 60 years of secrecy? Morrison, reassigned, escorted me into the canyon weeks later. They needed me. The creatures hadn't been seen in 6 weeks. They'd retreated, panicked by helicopters, media circus. The settlement was abandoned. I called them the way the mail taught me. Specific, low-frequency vocalization. Nothing. I tried again. Silence. Standing in that empty canyon, seeing abandoned structures, I felt something break. I'd done what I thought was right, but maybe Morrison had been correct. Maybe exposure was extinction. Then, movement. The elder emerged from the deep forest, approached slowly, stopped 5 feet away, extended one hand. In it, another carving. This one showed figures surrounded by others. Some are threatening with weapons. Others standing between, protecting. And above, 2 hands clasped together. One human, one not fleeing, standing together. The elder vocalized. I understood. Trust holds. What do you think these creatures really are? An undiscovered species? Something that's always been here? Drop your theory in the comments. And tell me what other mountain mysteries I should investigate. The clan hadn't fled forever. They'd gone deeper while chaos settled. But they'd left that message, showing me they understood. Despite everything, some things remained. Trust, understanding, the possibility of coexistence. The charges were dropped, public pressure, congressional intervention. The Cascade Zones became federally protected with enforcement that made Fort Knox look casual. Multiple other sightings reported. Other populations coming forward now that denial was no longer official policy. Morrison admitted something before she left. You did what we couldn't. You made them too important to hide. Too public to capture. Too documented to deny. Whether that saves them, we'll know in a few years. I hope you're right. So do I. It's March 2024. The world knows they exist. The government can't deny them. Scientists are developing observation protocols. Protection laws are being written. And in 14 other locations, other clans are being monitored publicly now, with transparency. The original clan comes back sometimes. Not to my cabin. Too many cameras. But to a place deeper in the protected forest, where Morrison's replacement, has allowed me access as part of official protocols. Last week, the mail came, left another offering, fresh salmon. The old trade continues, showing that despite everything, connection remains. He left one final carving, the most elaborate yet. It shows Earth, recognizable as a sphere with continents. Around it, many figures, different types, human-like, but not human. Between them, connecting lines, network, family, coexistence. They're not asking us to hide them anymore. They're asking us to see them as neighbors, fellow inhabitants of this planet. The government spent 60 years making them invisible, but invisibility isn't protection, it's erased. Morrison's replacement told me something that keeps me up at night. 14 documented populations, multiple hundreds of individuals, hidden in national parks, protected zones, federal lands. The cover-up wasn't about one clan. It was about protecting an entire parallel society that's existed alongside humanity for thousands of years. That's what they hid. Not that Bigfoot exists, but they've been here all along, building families, creating culture, developing tools and language, living in the shadows while we told ourselves they were myths. Now we know. Now we decide what kind of neighbors we'll be. The mail came back 3 nights ago. 3 in the morning, I heard that familiar vocalization. I opened the door. He placed something on the ground. Fresh salmon, the old trade. Then he did something new. He extended his hand, not offering something, just extend it, palm up. I placed my hand in his. His palm was warm, rough with calluses from decades working with stone and wood. He held my hand for maybe 10 seconds. Then he made a sound I'd learned meant gratitude, understanding, connection. He left, disappearing into the forest. But that gesture, that moment of physical connection between 2 different kinds of intelligence, that's what I think about when people ask if I regret exposing the truth. Share this with anyone ready to know the truth, anyone who's questioned what else is living in the places we think are empty, anyone who's stood in the forest at night and felt watched. Because they probably were. The clan is still there, still thriving, still raising their young. The settlement has expanded, new structures. They're not hiding, they're building, growing. But 3 weeks ago, something changed. The mail stopped coming. No visits, no offerings. Morrison's replacement got nervous. They sent scouts. The settlement was abandoned again. Not fled, abandoned deliberately. Structures intact. Food stores left behind. Like they'd moved by choice, or like they were preparing for something. Yesterday, I found this on my observation post doorstep. A new carving. Cedar bark. 5 symbols I'd never seen. Morrison's replacement called in linguists, cryptographers. No one can decode them, but there's something urgent about the arrangement. The first symbol, a circle with lines radiating outward. Sun, visibility, warning. The second, 2 hands clasped, but one pulling away. Connection breaking, distance necessary. The third, multiple figures, but scattered. Migration, dispersal. The fourth, mountains with paths between them. Movement across ranges, communication networks. The fifth, something I can't make out. A question mark, or something else. Something they're asking us, or warning us about. 14 documented populations. But how many undocumented? How many clans have we destroyed without knowing? How much forest have we clear-cut, developed, never knowing we were erasing entire communities that existed for thousands of years? The government's cover-up kept some populations safe, but it also meant we destroyed others without knowing what we'd lost. That's the real cost of the 60-year lie. Not just suppression of truth, but extinction of beings we could have protected if we'd admitted they were real. I'm Dave Mitchell. I'm 63 years old. Last November, something walked up to my cabin that changed everything. This investigation isn't over. The clan I've been monitoring isn't the only one making contact. Other populations are showing themselves, testing the waters, deciding whether this new world, where we acknowledge them, is safe enough to reveal themselves. Subscribe, because what comes next will change everything we understand about consciousness, intelligence, and what it means to be human. The beings in these mountains have stories to tell, knowledge we're only beginning to access. But those 5 symbols keep me up. The male hasn't returned to explain them. The settlement remains abandoned, and Morrison's replacement admitted something yesterday. We're picking up thermal signatures in other regions, populations moving, not fleeing, but relocating deliberately, coordinated across multiple mountain ranges, like they're preparing for something or organizing something. The question the clan left isn't just about coexistence. It's about what happens next, what they're planning, what they know that we don't. The clan is waiting for our answer, watching, listening, deciding whether the risk they took, coming out of hiding, choosing trust, whether that risk was worth it. I hope we prove it was. I hope 50 years from now, researchers will study this moment as the turning point, when humanity learned to share the planet with another form of intelligence. But that's not guaranteed. The only thing I know for certain is these beings are real. They're here. They've been here longer than we have, and they deserve better than 60 more years of lies. They deserve to be known, to be recognized, to be protected, not through secrecy, but through genuine respect. That's why I'm telling you this story. That's why I broke the cover-up. That's why I'm still out here, documenting them, learning from them. Because someone has to make sure that when our grandchildren ask what these mountains were like before everything changed, we can tell them the truth, that we shared this space with another intelligence, that we learned to coexist with neighbors who weren't like us, and maybe, if we're paying attention, we'll figure out what those 5 symbols mean before it's too late. Those 5 symbols carved in cedar bark are still sitting on my desk. No one's decoded them yet, and the male hasn't returned to explain what they mean. If you want to follow this investigation as it unfolds, because it's far from over, hit that subscribe button. Drop your theory in the comments. What do you think they're preparing for? And what are those symbols warning us about? I'll be back at the observation post tomorrow night, watching the tree line. And somewhere out there in the darkness. Thanks for watching.